The question that we have had sent in more than any other, Jules, can you guess what it is?
No.
It is about Kylian Mbappe.
That's fair.
Everybody's asked the same question as about whether or not, obviously, PSG could have done that with Mbappe in the side. I'll just remind you, a brilliant documentary, of course, that's out. Luis Enrique talking about Mbappe. This is last season, talking about his admiration of Michael Jordan and how maybe he needs to be inspired by him. I read that you like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan used to grab all his teammates by the balls and defend like a son of a bee. I know you're a god when attacking. There is no one better than you. I know that. But the day you don't attack, you have to be the best player in history defending. That's a leader. That's Michael Jordan. Was it just that Mbappe would not do what we saw, for example, Dembele do yesterday, Jules?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't even want to blame Kylian. Kylian is Kylian. He never defended in his whole life, not when he was 5 years old, not when he was 12, not when he was 17, and even less now that he's 25 years old. So I think Luis Enrique tried, and Luis Enrique, make no mistake, would have liked to keep Kylian Mbappe in the team still, because I think he recognized that his goals were so important that you could actually try to build something with him, around him, even if he would not defend. However, once he was gone, then I think Luis Enrique was still very happy in the sense that he could then build exactly what he wanted with the ball and without the ball, with everybody defending then. And we saw Toni Kroos yesterday with a very kind of cryptic message on social media by saying, look, this is what, when you are a team, a proper team, this is what you kind of achieve, really. And you do wonder if that was also a bit of a dig at this Real Madrid team this season that never had this kind of cohesion with the ball and without the ball. And we can make the same point for PSG last season with Kylian in the team. And had Kylian stayed, it would have been the same this season. And maybe they would have still won the Champions League with him because he would have scored 50 goals. And I'm sure Luis Enrique could have found another way without Mbappe defending to do well. But what's true is that the recipes of this success this season is mostly and purely based on a team where everybody attacks and everybody defends and everybody plays together and for each other, which with Kylian in the team would have been 10-1. 1-10, inevitably, because this is what we see everywhere with the national team, with Real Madrid, with PSG before, at Monaco before, at Bondy before, at the Clairefontaine Academy before, all the time. It was 10+1. So we will never know, but we know why PSG are winning this season for sure.
I would have been ready to bet on that, to say that it would have never worked with Kylian Mbappe. I'm very sorry because I highly rank Mbappe and I've a lot defended him in many matters throughout his young career. But as Toni Kroos mentioned, you need a team, you need a spirit, you need a way of sacrificing yourself to the team, which Kylian doesn't do. And I'm sorry, he doesn't defend when he loses the ball. You're the coach. Hey, run. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, bye-bye, out. When you would get it. I swear you would get it. And everybody's going to get it. And Messi was doing the efforts when he was young, when Pep Guardiola said, oh, you lose the ball, you chase it. At least 10 meters. I'm not asking to run back like we saw Dembele or Kvaratskhelia yesterday, but at least 10 meters to show to the others that you are involved in that piece of the jigsaw. That's the problem, and I always mention that having a superstar is a problem because you put the others below at the services of the superstar, and the team doesn't work like that. It never worked. It works if you are legit, like you were Messi because of what he did before at Barcelona, or you were Ronaldo because you showed to the world who you were before, and the coach managed to put the jigsaw around him to make sure that if he doesn't run back, defensively they're strong enough. It didn't never work for Paris Saint-Germain for years. And it worked this season because Kylian wasn't there and everybody was spot on to do the job. And that's the difference. And we have to put that on, I think, to emphasize that.
Nedum?
Yeah, I think what Frank said there is so important. And I think, Jules, as well, the point that he mentioned, like with attackers, do you know when we say they can't defend? I think that's a lie to protect somebody because they can. Like when you go and do training, we're suggesting then that if we do a rondo and that person stays in the middle, they'll be in the middle forever because they can't win the ball back. Well, of course they can, because they make the effort to try and go out. So much of defending at that sort of front level is the effort. You're not expecting them to be able to, make incredible tackles, but just apply a bit of pressure. It's the same like when we train and you do a game of possession. If it's 5v5 and you're trying to move the ball around, like people win the ball back. So when people say, well, I can't do this. Well, of course you can. And it comes, as Frank said, it comes down to desire. You have to be teaching these people that this is an important thing to do. Because not least of all, here's the carrot. If you're able to win the ball back up high, the goal is even closer. You can score more goals. But when you then decide, well, it's not for me, everything's harder, all of a sudden, the attacks that come from your team have to come from far deeper. I think we saw yesterday, we've seen this season with Paris Saint-Germain, they really flight you and they make these teams feel uncomfortable with a bunch of players in attack who are not defenders, but they know how to defend situations. Their task is to go and win the ball back. If you're playing in defense, maybe it's to be able to jostle with the striker or something, or, don't dive in or try and stop a cross. But when you're in attack, limit the service into the midfield and attack for that opposition. Go and make them uncomfortable. That is it. That's a desire issue. So I think when managers decide to accept that this player is just not going to do it and everything's fine, as Frank said, it's always a 10+1 or it's a 9+2. And at this stage, you find those teams that will always be easy to play against in the grand scheme of things, because teams will be able to get in the flow of it. And as we saw yesterday, when everybody defends together and attacks together, you can have moments like where Inter Milan don't know what's happened to them, but they've just been absolutely battered in a cup final and nobody can figure out why. But they just know that the game that they had was one which was never comfortable from the start, and that was because of PSG.
Go on, Gab.
No, I'm not that much of a purist. I think there's also an argument to be made for playing to your strengths. And I'm okay with playing for a superstar who is exceptionally good at one thing. If I come to believe that if I ask Mbappe to chase back and he might lose that 0.1% of sharpness, which means he needs to be, he might be that much slower when the ball comes over the top or whatever, then I might make that decision. But that has got to come from the manager. And I think we saw, to be fair to, and I'm the guy defending Mbappe here, I think we saw at times at Real Madrid this season, we saw that effort when he was asked to go and do more. Also because, let's face it, elephant in the room, the guy to the left of him in the Real Madrid attack generally does absolutely nothing at all, even less than Mbappe. I mean, Mbappe becomes Claude Makelele relative to Vinicius, right? Mm-hmm. So I think you have to put that in context too. Sometimes it is by design. And could it have been by design last season with Luis Enrique and Mbappe when, remember, for the whole second half of the season, there was the dispute with the club and he had the unpaid wages, and would he stay? Would he leave? Was his heart in it to that point? I don't know. Maybe he could have made it work, Luis Enrique, but yeah, I certainly don't blame him for adopting, if you will, the 10+1 last season, and then this season seizing the opportunity to really make it 11v11. And by the way, I'm glad you guys all talked about everybody attacking, because the Italian Champions League winner, Gigio Donnarumma, I think you can all say he worked very, very little in that game. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I believe he touched the ball once.
One save, I think, in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
One save and a couple weird kicks, which kind of, as that often happens, went all over the place, but didn't harm Paris Saint-Germain. So yeah, he was just as important. He attacked too in his own way.
That's good. You can crowbar that into the conversation, Gab. Surprisingly, when Luis Enrique was asked who should win the Ballon d'Or, his answer wasn't Donnarumma. Inevitably, it was going to be Dembele, considering what we've seen in the second half. I'd give the Ballon d'Or to Dembele. He defended the attack. The pressing was so good. I think without a shadow of a doubt, it should go to him. I think he was exceptional in this final. Frank's having a breakdown because we're talking about the Ballon d'Or. This, of course, a question that's been asked a lot of Enrique. Jules, who would you vote for?
Ousmane, absolutely. I just think that in 2025, especially, it was a good. We said it on Friday. He had a good start of the season. Then had a real deep. He was dropped for the game against Arsenal. That red card against Bayern Munich that we mentioned earlier. But since mid-December, the game away at Lyon in Ligue 1, the 2 games against Monaco, just unplayable at times. It doesn't have to be goals. It could be assists. It could just be the press, as we said, the pressing on Saturday, his effort the leadership, he did everything in the last 4.5 months. It's incredible. And in the end, he will finish the season with 45 goals involvement in 49 matches in all competitions. It's incredible, 45 in 49, 33 goals, 12 assists. At 28 years old, the talent was always there. It was just for him to finally find the extra little thing that would take him to another level. And he found that this season, and I'm obviously completely biased, but I'm very happy for him. But I also think he deserves it. He's the best player in the world currently.
Gab, did you let out an audible groan then?
Yes, how can we even have this discussion when the World Cup hasn't even happened yet?
Oh,
you would
God.
never ask this question before the World Cup.
Shut up, Marcotti. Don't start with your Club World Cup
He's going to have a
nonsense.
chance to do it in the Club World Cup No, I'm kidding. But I do think, though, that it is relevant because I think it could have an impact on what happens. Lamine Yamal obviously won't be there. Voters are a funny bunch of people, and if Paris Saint-Germain do well, if Dembele has a strong World Cup, then he may well win it.
What about you? Shut up.
Shut
what
up.
about you, Nedum?
You're right. It's better. Shut up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've spoken with Jules about, say, who's going to win Ballon d'Or beforehand, and previously we'd been talking about Lamine Yamal and so on, so it does feel like there's an element of recency bias here, but he did show up in that game yesterday, so that case is certainly going to be up there, and those stats, they definitely ring true. I think there might have been, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, Jules, but there might have been somewhat of a goal drought in recent weeks for him, but in reality, the change that he's had in the second half of the season has been astonishing to where you have to take note, seeing him play in that position, and as Enrique said, after lifting the Champions League, it's the work rate, it's the attacking and the defending. I think at times we're guilty of just looking at the attacking. But if we're going to talk about somebody who's been complete for their side and really change the narrative about what could be achieved, well, I think Ousmane Dembele had in Paris Saint-Germain lift that Champions League trophy. And for the season that he's had there, it's a tough case to go against, especially when, as you just did then, you put the stats of, say, himself and Lamine Yamal next to each other. Because Lamine Yamal offered so many moments, which we do love. But when you look at just output, that efficiency, he doesn't have it compared to Dembele. So Dembele in this moment, he is the king. And, as I say, recency bias is definitely a thing. And the PSG bias for Jules is also a thing. Mm-hmm. But if they gave it to him, there'd be no concerns from my standpoint.